Well, hi, Tyrone.
Hello, Nicole.
So the thing that I love about Ty is how crazy honest he is.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
You're crazy. Right.
Yeah.
You don't sugarcoat.
No.
You're a Taurus.
No, I'm a Pisces.
Oh,
My birthday's
that's right.
coming up.
When is your birthday? March what?
10th.
Right. Your beautiful wife, Elizabeth, is a Leo, like me. Is she a July Leo or is she a...
July.
July what?
25th.
And I'm
Christmas in July.
And I'm the 29th.
Oh,
so
even more
clearly, that's why we get along so well. Okay.
Yes.
So here's the thing. I like to have a little bit more finesse. I like to try to maybe be like a little sweeter. And
Yeah.
Ty just tells it how it is. But I appreciate that. Okay.
Okay.
And so we're going to be honest about why we're doing this podcast. One, we truly like each other, and
Yes.
we've known each other for a little over 6 years now, which is crazy.
Wow, yeah.
I listened to Ty, so before I worked at Beasley, before I worked at 92.5 XTU, maybe I should say this, because there's going to be Fanatic people listening that don't know me.
Yes.
Okay.
So all right, I'm Tyrone Johnson from 97.5 at Fanatic. I'm on 2 to 6, Monday through Friday on 97.5 at Fanatic at NBC Sports Philadelphia.
He's the host of the afternoon show.
Yes, the best show ever.
Yes.
As it's called.
Yeah, and I'm Nicole Michalik. I kind of just go by Nicole. Nicole is Nick on the socials, and I do afternoons 2 to 7 on 92.5 XTU, Philly's country station, and we are owned by Beasley, so Ty and I are co-workers.
Yes.
We're down the hall from each other. I'm a massive sports fan. Ty is just becoming a country fan.
That's true.
Yeah, last year really is when you started dipping your toe in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to do an episode about that, okay? And so I'm a crazy sports fan, and so I listened to you even before, when I was at iHeart, I still listened to you.
Right.
And then when I came to XTU, which is crazy, it was February 2019, I ran down the hall like a weirdo fan. I was like, oh my God, hi. And it was when Ty was on with Mike Missinelli and Natalie Eganoff, and Ty, Natalie, and I became friends, and we hung out outside and became friends with Ty's wife, Elizabeth, and it's been fun. So I'm a chatty Cathy, and I come down and I try to come in before, because we're technically on at the same time. You're done at 6, I'm done at 7.
Right.
I watch you every day, put you on the TV.
I see you in the background of your social. I see myself in the background of your social media videos you do during the program.
But Instagram blurs you out now, which is annoying.
Yeah, it's weird. I wonder. You know what? It's fine.
Actually, you're the one that was smart, and I said, because I was complaining that I don't get to see in the background, and you were like, you think Instagram did it because people would be creeping on people at the gym and stuff.
Yeah, it became a problem. We'll talk about that at an episode at some point. That whole gym culture and the different parts of it, because you have a whole connection to that as well. So we'll get to that, but not today. Now, we should probably tell the people, you should tell the people the name of the program.
Right, okay. So this is called Co-Worker Conspiracies.
Yes,
okay.
Co-Worker Conspiracies. Now, I just want you to know that most of the time, the conspiracies will come from Nicole, not from me, okay? And the reason is only because of this. How many times have you told anybody a secret? Let's say more than one person, and it stayed a secret. That's why I don't believe conspiracies, because people would snitch.
Good point. I appreciate that. I appreciate
That's
that.
why.
And the reason that we're doing this podcast also is because we have to do we have to get digital points.
Yeah. Yes.
So basically, corporate forces us to do all this digital stuff.
Yes.
So we need certain points in a quarter. And so Ty was like, we need to do a podcast. And I knew exactly what he was going to say. And I texted him back and I'm like, what is this going to be? And you said,
you'll do your crazy stuff, like your conspiracies and stuff, and then I'll refute them. But I only refute them if I disagree. I'm not going to disagree just to disagree.
Right.
I'm not going to play devil's advocate, because I hate that. I'm only going to disagree if I disagree.
And it makes me laugh because Ty really in another life, and listen, it's not too late, you're young, you could be a lawyer, because you have that brain where you're a thinker brain, I'm a feeler brain.
Okay.
I'm a thinker, don't get me wrong, I know I'm smart, but I'm more of I think a little woo-woo sometimes.
Yes.
And Ty's very much no, that is not correct. And he and I will go back and forth about it, because I'll come down to the little area and Ricky's there, and Savannah's there. We kind of just chit chat and stuff. And Savannah's always like, "Whoa, these people are crazy."
Yeah,
it's welcome to radio. Yeah. And today we're going to talk about hockey because it's this new thing that I've kind of developed. But one of the shows we're going to do, maybe the next one, that makes me laugh so hard because I've been saying this for like 2 years, and I'll just say this really quick, after the Phillies lost, I run down the hall and the first thing Tyrone says when he sees me is, no, it's not why they lost.
Not why they lost. No, we'll get to it. The reason we're waiting on the Phillies one is we'll be closer to opening day of the season. Obviously, the hockey season is in full swing as we record this, and that's part of the reason why we're doing this one. But we absolutely will cover your Phillies conspiracy as we get closer to opening day, which is literally only 23 days from today as we record.
Which is like, woo, it's going to go by like so fast. So I love the fact that like because Ty has a really good heart. So even though sometimes I'm like, whoa, you're harsh, he's so real. And I think you feel like even though I have crazy conspiracies that you love me as a person too.
Yes, and you're very talented.
Oh, well, so are you.
I said Nicole's very talented. I said that. I don't know. I should have told you. I said Nicole's very talented.
Well, you're very talented as well.
Well, thank you.
And that's why here we are in Philadelphia in this tiny production room trying to get our digital points.
Yes. Now, don't go wrong. Over time, our background and things will change over time. But literally, there's like a million technical issues going on in the station right now. There are not that many free spaces where the engineers won't come in and interrupt right now. There's not that many as we speak, take you behind the curtain. It's a technical issue that affects my show and Nicole's show and Preston and Steve and every single person across the cluster that we're dealing with right now. So, I'm a sports person by trade, and there are certain rules in the city of Philadelphia when it comes to sports. Now, where are you from originally, Nicole, for the people that don't know? Okay,
so I'm from a small, tiny town called Summit Hill, Pennsylvania, which is like 10 minutes from Jim Thorpe. A lot of people know Jim Thorpe. I try to just explain it. If you go up the turnpike, you go through the tunnel. The first exit outside the tunnel of the turnpike is the Mahoney Valley exit, and I'm like 20 minutes off that exit. So my town's so small, we don't even have traffic lights. It is just stop signs.
Wow. Now, is there a bar in your town?
Oh, there's tons of bars. In fact, our town was claimed to fame that every corner used to have a church or a bar.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
now, obviously,
cool.
It's not like that anymore.
Yeah, but there's still some bars.
Yeah.
Still standing.
Oh, yeah. Definitely still some bars. There's only one Catholic church left. There used to be, But there's like less than 1,000 people in my town. Very small.
Oh, wow.
But I was like the crazy person who wanted to move to the big city and be in entertainment, like went to Catholic school my whole life. But my dad, who I've loved dearly, and, you know, I know you lost your mom. She was very close to you, very close. I lost my dad in August of 2023, and he was a sports fanatic, no pun intended.
Right.
So much so that he would watch ESPN Classic and yell at the TV.
About the games that he already knew the results.
And I was like, Dad, this is from 1986. You know, the Sixers pull this one out, you know?
Right.
And so he was a coach. He coached basketball, but he also, like, he was the guy that growing up, like, he would play with his buddies on Saturday mornings and Wednesday nights, and he'd play softball. He'd play flag football. My brother played every sport. Now my brother is a football ref, and he's also a basketball coach. He's going to coach my niece in soccer.
Oh, wow.
So, like, I just grew up a big sports girl.
Right.
So people that don't know you, give your background.
Yes, so I'm from Pensacola, New Jersey. So I'm literally from, I think it's 11 miles from the station. Yeah, something like that from where we are right now. And I got my first radio job. Okay, so I wanted to do this from the time I was 12. It was probably before that, but I didn't know it existed. And one day there was a snow day from school. Yeah. And in my house, like my brother and I, we had to go out to shovel to make money. Right. And my dad always had to deal with us that like he would, if we made, making up the numbers, we made $50, he would give us $50, so then we'd have $100. Oh, he would match whatever we made. Yeah. And then that's how like I got my first CD player and stuff. Well, in the house that we moved into, which we had moved into years before, there was an AM radio just left behind that the owners didn't take for whatever reason. Oh, wow. Okay. I plug it in. Yep. And we just spin it down to see if it works because we're done shoveling and stuff and we're just in the basement, like, you know, that's where our like Nintendo, I guess it was Genesis by then. Well, that's where it was, like, go in the basement. I don't want to hear from you. Like, be quiet. So we're down there. We just said, let's see if this radio works. And I turned it on and it was sports talk. It was 610 WIP. It was the only station at the time. At the time. And they were talking about sports. Yeah. AM. Yeah. Because it was only AM radio. And it worked. And then I was like, wait, people do this as a job? And it's the only thing I've wanted to do since.
Now,
So,
was your dad a sports guy? Like, did you?
Yeah, he was a big sports fan.
Okay,
Huge
and you
sports
played
fan.
sports.
Yeah. Played sports, played in high school, basketball, football, track. I was varsity in a bunch of sports. I wasn't the star player on any of those teams. But I was on a lot of the teams. Yeah.
But a lot of people who are the best coaches are not the stars because they understand the game, because they have to like work a little harder. They see the floor, they see the field a little differently.
Yeah, generally there's a reason why like Michael Jordan wasn't a great coach, or Magic Johnson wasn't a great coach, or Larry Bird couldn't coach for long, because Larry Bird would go to players and say, just do this. And the players would look like, hey, Larry, just because you can do that,
right?
These are NBA players going, yeah, we can't just do that. So, yeah, played all of that. I got my first radio job when I was 20 there, and it's just been off to the races. I mean, I did politics. I worked for the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, you.
I've been around. So.
How long have you been at the Fanatic?
I've been in the Fanatic. All right, so I started the Fanatic first time in 2016.
Okay.
And then the program director at the time, there was a position that I thought I should have had, and he said he was going to do a nationwide search, so I left and went to work in New York.
Yeah, and then you came back.
And honestly, it ended up being a blessing in a way. The only reason I came back was because my mom was ill, and my brother, sister, and my dad were the primary caretakers, and I was up in New York, like, not helping.
Yeah.
And when I got the opportunity to come back, the first time I said no, and then I really only took the job in the first place. No, the only reason I took the job, not just, it is the only reason I took the job, was because my mom wasn't well, and I needed to help out. So I came back in January 2018. She passed away in October of 2019, so I was around. I was literally there and all that stuff. So it ended up being the right thing to do, and then we get to where we are now.
Wait, so you came back a month before they won the Super Bowl, the Eagles won the Super Bowl the first time?
Yep.
Whoa, that's divine intervention.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Oh, you were there.
I was out in Minnesota and stuff back when I was allowed to go to such places, yeah. So I was there. Yeah, it was cool. So, but yeah, that was 1 month. 1 month before. And it was also right when they signed Bryce Harper.
Which is crazy,
That all happened right in the first couple months after I came back.
Yeah, so really quick with me, so I went to Drexel and I interned. Like I said, I was obsessed with pop culture, I was a pop girl, and was obsessed with Q102, and I was working at an internship, and a woman that I worked with at my internship was related to the marketing director Q102, so I interned and was on the promo crew all through college, and then I ended up moving to Dallas, Texas. I hated it. I was in promotions, came back. Then I don't have rich parents, so I needed to pay my rent and have health insurance. So I worked as a receptionist from 9 to 5.
Yeah, you need a job.
Yeah, I needed a job. I worked as a receptionist 9 to 5. And then when they needed fill-ins at B104 in Allentown, I would drive from Northeast Philly to be on the air from 7 to midnight. Then I did Lancaster every weekend. I would drive back and forth from Philly to Lancaster and FM 97.
How long was the Allentown drive, and how long was the Lancaster drive?
Allentown was like an hour and 10. Lancaster was like hour and a half.
Okay.
Back and forth, right?
No, that's that hustle. Like, I left out, like, this isn't Still Thunder, but for people sometimes don't realize like how much, like, there's a lot of people who think they can do our job or think that like their podcast, this is not against podcasts because we're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
What it's about is they don't necessarily recognize like how we hone our skills. There were days where I worked in Philly and New York in the same day. Like, there were times I would produce a morning show in New York in the morning, get on the train and come here and do afternoon.
Okay, Tom Joyner. Okay, Tom.
Well, I wasn't doing it on the air. I was a producer, but I produced the morning in New York, took the train, and then produced afternoons in Philly in the same day. Yeah. And those are kind of the things that most of us, not everybody, but most of us in this business that have done, I don't know, if you still have a job, I should say. Like, really, I'm not even talking about not doing well. Yeah. Most of the people that did had to do things like you're describing. Yeah. So I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all.
Your story is unique to you, obviously, but that kind of grind and hustle is what most people that are still employed in this business did at some point.
And I will say, like, and I don't know if it was like that for you, but for me, it was about, like, I still loved it. Like, I couldn't believe that I was on the air.
I still love it.
Yeah, still love it.
Still love it.
And the fact is that, really quick, I brought up Tom Joyner, but Tom Joyner is a legend radio guy, and back in the day, he would do a morning show in Dallas, and then he would fly to Chicago. Every day. This was obviously before 9/11, so he used to walk on the plane. He had the same seat on his plane. And then he would do afternoons in Chicago, and then he would fly back and do more. He did it for like over 10 years.
He did it for over 10 years. Yeah. And he was talking about the miles that he had, because obviously you build up your frequent flyer miles. I think he said he could fly, I think he told some story where he could fly from anywhere in the U.S. to Australia, I think it was like 35 or 40 times. For free, first class. That's how many miles. And Australia's like one of the longest. There's 20-some hours of flight. He could fly that. They were talking about like more times than he could. Like, and just built up the miles from all that time. That kind of, now he's unique, but that's the mentality of most people, not all, I'm not speaking for everyone, most people that are still gainfully employed in this business.
Correct. And it is a bit of addiction. And I will say, like you brought up Bryce Harper, like I was on the air live that day. Like I was on the air live when we won the Super Bowl. I was on live when they lost the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? I was here. Both of us were live on the air when the riots were happening in 2020. We came in every day with COVID. Ty and I were one of the only people that we literally came in.
I was never home during the whole pandemic when people were home or whatever, we were never home. Never home.
But it was remarkable because like doctors would call in, nurses would call in, first responders, and like you got to talk to people, and it's like, you know, this could be a whole separate podcast about the importance of radio and how like we're trying to keep it alive and well because no one does what we do. So anyway, the thing I also love about Ty, I got to say quick, is that he knows so much. Like, he has so much knowledge of everything. Sometimes I'll listen to him and I'm like, how the F does he know that? But you're just like, you just like information, I think. Yeah,
and what happens is that there's a certain amount of responsibility.
Good point.
And sometimes it gets, I understand it can be annoying for people, but if you have a platform, and I think this is, whether it's a really small platform or a large platform, you shouldn't speak about things that you don't know about. Doesn't mean you shouldn't speak. I'm saying you shouldn't speak about things you don't know about. Well, the more you know, in my opinion, is more of a license to speak about more things. The more, because I'm only going to speak about things I feel like I know about. So if I know about 3 things, then I can only talk about 3 things. If I know about 10 things, I can talk about 10 things. If I know about 100 things, I can talk about 100 things. If I know about 1,000,000 things, I can then talk about 1,000,000 things. So it started off with just being a nerd. But there became a purpose to it at some point.
And I love that you said it's a responsibility because it is, which leads us into our first topic about I feel irresponsible that I didn't know about this first topic because would you consider me a little above average for like a white female? Do you think that I'm above average with my sports knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. So I always prided myself, you know what I mean? Like I knew who Charlie Ward is. You know what I mean? Most people, I remember, you know, when I bring that as a fun fact, people are like, how do you know Charlie Ward? And Charlie Ward, he went to Florida State. He won the Heisman. He also played basketball.
Well, he won the Heisman one year, and then the next year got drafted by the Knicks. And played in the NBA. He never played in the NFL.
So it was, so like that kind of stuff, right? And it could be like a Trivial Pursuit question, but also, like I said, I grew up in a massive, now I should say really quick that my dad was a massive St. Louis Cardinals fan. So I actually grew up a Cardinals fan. Did you know this?
No.
Yeah, so my papa, my dad's dad, was named Stanley. So it was...
After Stan the Man Musial?
Correct. Well, not after him, but he...
Okay.
My pop-up was like, whoa, there's a Polish guy in Major League Baseball? I'm going to root for him. And my uncle was also Stanley, and we went to St. Stanislaus Church in Summit Hill, PA. So the whole Polish thing was like a very big deal. So my pop-up...
Is Michalik a Polish last name?
It's a Polish last name,
I don't know. My wife's last name was Polish.
Oh, really? What's her maiden name?
Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Her mom's side. Yeah,
her mom's side.
Sikorsky.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, we have a lot in common. Jeez. Okay. So, so I grew up Polish, the whole thing, pierogies, kielbasa, blah, blah, blah. So I grew up, because of Stan Musial, my whole side of the family was huge St. Louis Cardinal fans, to the point where we would go to Phillies games when the Phillies would play the Cardinals, and we would come and we would go to the vet. It would be my Uncle Fred, my cousin Brian, my dad. My brother's 6 years younger than me, so my dad and I would go, just the two of us, with my uncle and my cousin and stuff, and you know, Ozzie Smith, like the whole 9 yards. Now, when I came to Drexel, that was the time I came to, around the time, which was crazy, when it was obviously like the Donovan McNabb year, so 2004, 2005, that whole thing of the Eagles were really good. But then also I was here when the Phillies won the World Series. So I kind of adopted, I was always an Eagles fan. My dad was a massive Sixers fan, Dr. J, like the whole thing. But because we grew up near the Poconos, I was more, I was more into my high school football because it was coal region football, so that was a massive thing.
Yeah.
And Penn State. So like
That makes
two
sense.
aunts and two uncles. We obviously followed the Eagles, but not to the extent that I do now.
Yeah, the games were on. That was the local game.
Correct.
But you weren't a fanatic at the time.
Correct. So, but when I came here for college, I became obsessive with the Eagles and, like I said, the Sixers. So the whole point of this is hockey was never on my radar, right?
Yeah.
Never on my radar. People like the Flyers, obviously knew about the Flyers. Fun fact, I actually babysat for Bobby Clark's grandkids, which I didn't even know who Bobby Clark was when I was on the promo crew.
So wait a minute. At that time, you didn't get assigned anything for Bobby Clark, even though you were babysitting his grandchildren.
I'm going to tell you what happened. Okay, so I'm working at Q102 and part-time.
Yeah.
The marketing director at the time, her name is Lisa. She was like, hey, so my friend Nicole, her friend was named Nicole, she needs you to babysit. She's looking for a babysitter. Would you babysit her kids? And I was like, yeah, I babysat all the time, right? I'm in college. I'm working part-time in radio.
Yeah.
Babysitter. So going to babysit, Voorhees, the whole thing. And Lisa's like, by the way, it's Bobby Clark's grandkids. I was like, I don't know who that is. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I have no idea. So
Okay.
I babysat for them 2 or 3 times. And the one time Bobby came home, he was the one that they were living with him.
Okay.
He came home to relieve them. And people were freaking out. And I was like, I didn't know the level of the legendary status that he was.
Right.
And they're probably in their late 20s or his grandkids at the time.
Yeah, now. Yeah,
because this was probably 2003, 2004.
So that's 20 years.
Yeah,
So
so
they're
they were
probably
8,
they're late 20s, early 30s now.
Yeah. So I just think it's absolutely hilarious. So I needed to put that in perspective. That's how little I knew about the Flyers. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. But see, none of that so far, just so you know, none of this is a crime. So far, Nicole, 20 minutes into this podcast, has completely clean hands. But I promise you, she will not have clean hands by the end of it. Go right ahead.
Okay. So even now, when they went to the Stanley Cup in 2010,
Yep. Magical run.
cheered them on, but and then they sucked for the last couple years.
Yeah, then they had a stretch. Well, the first time in pro sports history, any major team where they went make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, back and forth for 10 straight years. No team had ever done that before.
Oh,
in pro
wow,
sport.
I didn't know that.
They had
Okay.
a 10-year run where they made, miss, back and forth. No one had alternated like that for 10 consecutive years until the Flyers did before they finally decided to get rid of Fletcher and start this rebuild.
Okay. So obviously, I knew Claude Giroux, and it was a
Claude.
big deal, Claude, when he left, and people were so upset. If Claude walked into the station right now, I would still have no idea what he looks like.
I would know what he looks like. I just wouldn't say hi because I don't like Claude.
Okay, why?
Because I don't like the way he left.
Okay. So
There was a bidding war, and then he said, nope, I'll just go to one team. And then, ironically, the team he wouldn't go to, Colorado, he ended up going to Florida.
Right.
Colorado was going to bid against Florida. The Flyers could have gotten more in return. Instead, he just picked, I'll only go to Florida. They got very little in return for him. Had he just let them bid, he might have still ended up in Florida, and the Flyers would have got more. So I didn't think he did the franchise a favor on the way out, and therefore, for the rest of my life, I won't like Claude.
And not to mention, he was the most Philly tenured athlete at the time.
Yeah, but he wanted to win. He wasn't going to win here.
Right.
I didn't mind.
And he didn't win anyway.
No, well, Colorado ended up winning the team he refused to go to.
Right.
Ended up winning the Stanley Cup that year. Florida has since won, but
Without
he now
him.
plays in Ottawa.
He plays it all, which leads me to the whole story because Ottawa is part of my Sidney Crosby journey, okay? So I just discovered Sidney Crosby, which I do believe that it is very off-brand for me because normally I, as an above-average person with sports knowledge, now I guess if you would have asked me this 3 months ago, I probably would have yeah, I knew the name, but I don't necessarily knew I don't think I realized that he played for the Penguins his whole career. I don't think I realized that he's almost 40. I don't think I realized that
he's already a Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest players to ever live.
Yeah. So I probably would have been oh yeah, I know that. I don't think I would have realized what he looked like. I would have recognized the name.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm following the whole Ovechkin and him about to break
Gretzky's
whole
goals
thing,
record,
right?
yeah.
But this is even funnier. I met Wayne Gretzky, which is the craziest thing ever. The whole story for another day because he's a Trumper. But anyway, and he's even.
We don't have to talk about politics today. We're not going to talk about politics today on here.
But I was at the Elvis, remember the movie Elvis that came out 3 years ago?
Yeah.
So I went to the
The actor said he had trouble after the movie dropping the Elvis accent.
Yeah,
'cause he was
Austin
method
Butler.
about it.
Yeah. So I went to the junket in Memphis at Graceland, and Wayne Gretzky was there. And so it was right after Colorado had won the Stanley Cup. And yeah, and so like we were just like in the little bar area and like got a picture and stuff. So anyway, which is funny, obviously I knew who Wayne Gretzky was, you know what I mean? And obviously I knew Eric Lindros, but like, so anyway, I really haven't followed hockey ever. And like, I kind of, don't you think it's kind of like baseball where like in the 90s, the players were like were bigger? It's like everybody knew Barry Bonds, everybody knew, you know, Alex A-Rod, everybody knew Derek Jeter.
The data says hockey's bigger now, but I hear you.
Okay. So, back in the fall, I read this hockey romance book.
I read a hockey
romance book. It's called Heated Rivalry, okay? It also now has a sequel called The Long Game, okay?
You want to watch that? You want to read that next?
I already read it.
So hold on. When you say romance,
yes,
how
it's very spicy to the point where I like thought like when I was driving down the Schuylkill, I was like, are people listening in my car? Like it was.
Oh, you had the audiobook.
I had the audiobook. Yeah.
So you're hearing the person describe what's going down.
Very spicy.
So R-rated.
Oh, yes.
Maybe more than R-rated. I'm saying.
Yes, probably a little bit more than, because it's a whole thing now, Book Talk. Do you know about Book Talk?
Yeah, I know about Book Talk. So, I mean, I don't participate in it, but I'm aware of it.
So Book Talk, for those of you who don't know, on TikTok, it's basically all these trending books, right? And there's all these different genres. I'm not into mystical. I'm not into creatures. Just like I liked Scandal, because I believe that like Olivia Pope was like in DC fixing things. Like I like shows that are, and like movies. When I was a kid, I didn't watch cartoons. Like I watched One Life to Live. Right?
So it's a drama.
Yeah, so like, or comedy, whatever, but I just like real people. So when I read books, I like to read books about like, even if they're fiction, this is obviously a fiction book. It's about, so the book is.
But, no. Okay. So the book, wait a minute, so this spicy book is about, loosely, if I'm correct, Sidney Crosby, allegedly?
Here's what it is. It's about the best player in Canada, and the best player in Russia, and they get drafted 1 and 2.
Well, that's what happened with them too. Although what happened was there was a strike, so they ended up being Ovechkin was drafted first, Crosby the next year.
Yeah.
But Ovechkin basically sat a year, and then so they were both first overall picks, but they started their first NHL game at the same time because of a strike.
Right.
So it's loosely, that's a direct parallel to Crosby Ovechkin.
Right. And so, well, a little bit, because the Russian player goes to Boston, the Canadian player goes to Montreal. So, and they are they have this massive rivalry. So, so the NHL makes it this massive rivalry, but the whole spicy part of the book, and there's a lot of sports, there's mental.
Right, but somehow, how do they go from playing hockey, two dudes, to getting spicy? You don't have to explain.
Yeah, it's a gay romance. They fall in love with each other.
Wait a minute. So in addition to it being spicy, I didn't know this. I'm finding this out in real time like you guys are. So in the book,
they fall in love. Well,
these two rivals fall in lust.
Well, yes, because the book spans 13 years.
So
and
for
it's
13
secret.
years, these two guys, not Crosby and Ovechkin.
Right.
But these two dudes.
Yes, these book characters.
Fall in love. Fine, no issue with that.
But it's not right away.
Right, eventually. I'm saying over the 13 years.
Spoiler alert.
Well, they're not going to read it. Well, hold on. But hold on then. But now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard you speak before. You're a heterosexual woman.
Correct.
So how did a book about a homosexual relationship get you liking a man in a heterosexual way? Like, how did you make that jump?
Because here's the thing so Book Talk is like books all over the place. I read all different books. This book was like so I'm like, and I love sports. I love athletes. Everybody's like, this is so good. It's also very funny too. So it's funny and it's spicy.
Book, but you gotta make the leap before I tell you how wrong you are. Because so far your hands are still clean. But I promise you they're not going to be.
So this book was really good. And so anyway, I then, because the algorithm, right? So I'm like, oh, heated rivalry. Okay, it's really good. Then the sequel's a long game. And so then one of the TikToks pops up about how supposedly one of the main characters is based off of Sidney Crosby. So then I go down the Sidney Crosby rabbit hole and I go, oh my God, I love him.
And now we have a problem. You can't live here and love Sidney Crosby. If you lived in Pittsburgh, you could. If you live anywhere else, you cannot live in Philadelphia and love Sidney Crosby. Now your hands are very dirty.
So
keep your distance. I don't want you touching me with those dirty hands.
So now I am an ultimate fangirl, right? From the time I'm the girl that loved Backstreet Boys, loved NSYNC. I love
the posters and all that stuff.
100%. Like I was obsessed with I'm always a fangirl of something, right?
Okay.
It's just like my personality, right? Mm-hmm. And it jumps. Like my friends still tease me about the Olympics in 2008. I was obsessed with Michael Phelps. He got me through. I was heartbroken over a boy, and Michael Phelps, his Olympic run got me through. Like I get obsessed with, I fangirl, okay?
Okay.
So I go down this Sidney Crosby rabbit hole, and I'm like, oh my God, he's amazing. Like he is so sweet. He does so much. He does so much charity.
I mean, the charity part, fine, but you don't know him to know he's sweet.
Is one of the best hockey players of all time.
Yes, I can't. I have to acknowledge that, but I don't want to.
Okay, he literally every interview he does is just so in depth and thoughtful. So this all happened around the Four Nations, which was
a couple weeks ago.
So it was very strange how this all manifested around the same time. Okay, to the point that I went to my very first Flyers game because I wanted to see him play. All right.
You went to the Flyers-Penguins game.
Well, I went to two so far because I went to the first one that was the night before the Super Bowl, and he didn't play because he was hurt.
Flyers kicked their butts.
Right. He didn't play the first game.
Go Flyers.
Because he was hurt and he wanted to play in the Four Nations.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I went to the game last week, which was on February 25th, and I had crazy good seats. And I was right in front of him. I was like, hey, boo. And so this is my point. It's not that I want the Penguins to win. I just want him to do well.
No, it's not okay. And here's why it's not okay. Because all right. When the Flyers are good, right now in the modern era, there's three possible rivals, all right? The Rangers, the Penguins, which were number one, I still believe in hatred, and then the Devils some.
Okay.
The Flyers aren't good right now. They're rebuilding. But when they're good, so those are the teams they have to hate. Therefore, let's say hypothetically the Flyers were good next year.
Okay.
And the Flyers are playing the Penguins, who also stink, but let's say the Penguins are good next year. Or if they're not good. And you go down to that Flyers game and the Wells Fargo Center is rocking and rolling. You're now in a spot where you're split. Because you'll say, and this is what you'll say, well, I hope the Flyers win, but I hope Crosby has a good game. But that's what you'll say. That's what you'll say. I hope Sidney Crosby has a good game, but I want the Flyers to win. What if the Flyers win 5-3, but Crosby has a hat trick? That's what this becomes. And
that's a dream. If Crosby has a hat trick and the Flyers win,
that's not a
dream scenario.
That's not a dream. That's not a dream scenario. What you want is the Flyers to win 100-0 and him to get nothing. And that's what happened
last week. I was devastated for him. He didn't even have an assist.
Of course he did.
The Flyers won.
Penguins are stink. Penguins stink right now. And there's a lot of history. In recent history, you had somehow the Pittsburgh has had all these great players at the same time. They had Jaromir Jagr and Mario Lemieux at the same time. Lemieux greater than Jagr, but at the time. Then you end up with both Crosby and Malkin. The Flyers, meanwhile, as far as players that great in the last 40 years, 50 years, they've had one, Lindros.
And that's it.
Meanwhile, the Penguins have had pairs 2 different times.
Right.
You had Lemieux in the somewhat recent history.
See, I should have talked to Bobby Clark when I babysat.
Yes, because Bobby Clark is from the previous generation and was a great player. And then you had some good players along the way, but I'm talking about guys as good as Crosby.
Right.
Guys as good as Malkin. Guys as good as Lemieux. Guys as good as Jagr. We've had Lindros.
Right.
And Claude Giroux, while good, was never on those guys' level.
Okay.
So for you to like Sidney Crosby,
so
it's not allowed.
So this has become a massive issue in our building because obviously, like we just said when we opened the podcast, we have the Fanatic here, we have XTU, we have MMR, our close friend Marissa Magnata, who works for Preston and Steve, who's very chill. She's like, do. So I bring it up to her in passing the other day. She was horrified. She goes and calls Chuck D'Amico, who used to be your boss, who now, and screams at him down the hallway. Marissa's like, I can't believe this. So again, let me preface this. I didn't realize the Sidney Crosby Philadelphia hate.
Right, but you know now, and you have to do the right thing.
Now
say out loud that you don't love him anymore.
So now
say out loud that you don't love him anymore.
No, I'm not doing that. I stand on conviction.
You can't. See, this is what I mean. This is the problem. You see, this is why there's, like, I believe in whimsy, believe it or not. I believe in whimsical, believe it or not. But you're too whimsical, too much whimsy, too much whatever.
The irony is you're the Pisces. Pisces are whimsical, but you know what?
I am whimsical.
My moon sign's Pisces, so that makes sense.
I am whimsical, but I can't be okay with love above all things. Like love doesn't pay the bills. Like you can't just be wilding out your whole life. Love doesn't pay the bills. Love alone won't keep you warm at night. You're going to still need a blanket.
You're right.
And you'll never have any blankets or any prosper. You will not prosper loving Sidney Crosby of Philadelphia.
So I'll say this really quick before we wrap up. Our coworker, Mike Vito, who works for the Fanatic, he now loves this. The fact that he's like, you need to hate Sidney Crosby. So he's like, you gotta watch the crazy shift from Claude Giroux from 2012. So
I remember that shift.
All my YouTube algorithms are all like Flyers highlights from like 2010, 2011, 2012. Yeah. I did not realize, though, in that time that the Flyers had hoped that Claude Giroux was going to be one of the stars of the NHL. He was on the cover of the game.
Right, and he never quite reached that level. He was a good player.
I had no idea.
But he never became a great player.
Yeah.
Because ultimately he can't score like some of those guys. And when you're an assist guy, this part wasn't his fault, you have to have great teammates to score or you don't get an assist.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you can explain why didn't he?
One is because ultimately he wasn't dangerous enough on his own to make other players just better. Like if I'm good enough to score 50 goals, all right? That's like a benchmark in hockey, right? If I can score 40, 50 goals consistently per season, if I can do that, right? And it's rare. That's why it's unfair that Pittsburgh's had 100 of those guys because they're rare to have those guys. So if I'm that good, I draw so much attention that I can then get the puck to a lesser player and they'll score just by accident because I'm drawing so much attention. He wasn't at that level.
Right.
He was good, though, and he was a very good passer, but he wasn't so good that he would draw so much attention to where you would leave other guys open.
Right, okay.
And that was his limitation.
Okay, got it.
While the top guys are like, Ovechkin's just a pure scorer.
Yeah.
So he's just going to score. Everybody tries to stop him, and they just can't. He wasn't that. But there are other guys who have more of a diverse game. If he was a 10 to 20% better scorer, who knows what it could have been?
Right.
Because he would have got more assists just because he's the guy. Now, right now, you have, young Matvei Michkov on the Flyers, for example. He has more ability than Klute. Now, we'll see if he'll have a better career.
Well, I was going to say, I wanted to ask you your prediction.
Oh, yeah, he's going to be all-time great. If the question is, he's going to be all-time great as long as he's healthy. The question is going to be, will he be an all-time great here? Right. Because ultimately you have to surround him with other players. Yeah. And that's why what they didn't do with Lindros, they got close to enough good players, but not quite because they didn't have the goaltending. You have to make sure you do the best things for the kid.
Yep.
But he's the most talented player since Lindros. He is far more talented than Klute, but talent alone doesn't get it done.
Right.
So he has to then become a better, good enough player to back up all that talent. But he was once again in February NHL Rookie of the Month.
Right. So I'm obviously into him now because I think it's great that we have this young star. I love the fact that he has a translator. You know what I mean? He's just so green, but he's killing it. And and that's what I wanted to ask you. So it's we need to make sure that we surround him with other great players to give him a chance to be a superstar.
Right.
Who's the best player in the NHL right now?
Best player?
Is it McKinnon?
It could be McKinnon.
Look at me knowing hockey now. Thank you, Sidney Crosby.
No, I'm thinking about it now. Because
now these are the ones that I know now. Austin Matthews, big deal. McKinnon, obviously Ovechkin's still really good.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to break the record?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you happy about that?
Yeah. I'm always happy when records get broken.
Me too. I totally agree. That's what Tyrone and I agree that like we like new progress. We like being on. Yeah, that's why another thing we get along. Okay, and then the Kachuks.
Yeah.
Well, the one Matthew's better than the other one.
Matt's, his dad Keith was a good friend of mine.
Was he?
I just say that. The players I like, I just call them my friend.
Okay. Who else is the star?
Some Oilers guys that are excellent.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're not rooting for the Flyers, are you rooting for anybody else?
The Oilers.
Okay, why?
Because they have players that I want the Flyers to have.
Okay, yeah.
They play like I wish the Flyers would play.
It's Canada.
No, it's not that. It's skill. It's skating. Flyers were decades behind with just get the biggest, slowest, strongest guys all the time and let's get goons. I think that's stupid. Like, just get really good players.
Yeah, well, that goes back to the whole thought process of being progressive and knowing where the game's going.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, all right, well, Ty said his piece. I would love to know what you think, if you think it is an absolute travesty. Again, I wore my Flyer sweatshirt.
Yeah.
But when you said it, you just manifested.
My favorite player is Connor McDavid.
Oh, McDavid, I forgot about him. Yes, he always looks miserable, but
well, I'd be miserable too if I had that much ability doing that. Just so you know, in a bad year so far, he has 22 goals, 53 assists.
Yeah, which is crazy.
He already has 75 points. Last year in 76 games, he had 132 points. The year before, 82 games, he had 84 goals, 89 assists.
Right.
64 goals, 89 assists for 150
So he's
points.
Probably the best player. McKinnon's probably second.
Well, no, he's not having a great year this year. He's like fourth in goals.
He got married, that's why.
He'll be all right. But those are the type players I want the Flyers to have more of.
He's from Canada, though, too, because he played...
Yeah, a lot of top guys are from Canada, Russia, but there's enough homegrown American players. Now listen. This was a mild one, people. Going forward in this podcast, Nicole's going to say way more outlandish stuff than this. But I'm telling you, if you're not a sports fan, if you're more of a country listener, it's a sin what she's doing, loving Sidney Crosby. If you're a sports fan, I have to tell you that it took a lot of self-control to not walk the hell out of this room because she is a Sidney Crosby fan, because she's not allowed.
But don't you think it lessens don't you think it's a little less because the Flyers have sucked for so long?
No.
Like, the rivalry isn't the same.
No, it's not.
And he's a good person. If he was a jerk, it would be different.
Okay, oh my God. Okay, you don't know that. You think he's a good person. You've never met him.
The NHL just did this whole piece right around Four Nations about how he's this great gift giver.
Yeah, okay.
And they interviewed all these people.
Knows how to give a gift. Okay, so that don't mean he's a good person. Like Scrooge. Scrooge gave all them gifts afterwards. Would that one day make him a good person?
Don't you think it would have come out by now that he was a jerk?
I don't know. People worship that dude. There's a lot of people out there like you. There's many dudes in love with him too.
You know what? I will say this story very quickly. With the first Flyers game that I was at, which was the day before the Super Bowl, there was a girl like 3 rows in front of me, and she was wearing a powder blue Sidney Crosby jersey. And there was these 5 old, gross Flyers fans behind me. Yeah, she was like in her 20s. They were like yelling at her, calling her the P word. And I like let it go. And then finally, they're like, that jersey's even real. And I turn around and go, yes, it is. It's from the Stadium Series 2008. A simple Google search would have told you it's a real. And I'm
go ahead.
And so anyway, and then I saw her. We went to the bathroom, and I was like, listen, I'm like, I love Sidney Crosby, so I love your jersey. And she was like, oh, you're a Flyers fan too? I go, yes.
You're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Listen, this is our time for Co-Worker Conspiracy. Soon
this is mild.
Okay, this is mild. We'll just easy you in. So this will be step 1, all right? And we'll have this on YouTube and soon everywhere where podcasts are available. And we appreciate you guys. Any closing thoughts for the people, Nicole?
Sidney Crosby forever. Read Heated Rivalry and The Long Game.
Well, read the books if you want. I don't care about the books, but no on Sidney Crosby. And we'll talk to you guys.
Let's go Flyers.
Soon.